Well, welcome to another episode of the Esports Classroom Podcast, where we're talking to esports coaches and others involved with esports all about a lot of different perspectives on scholastic esports. And today we have with us a former college esports coach, now working for NAECAD. So I'm going to let you kind of introduce yourself, Cole.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Patrick. So my name is Cole Prescott. For 6 years, I was the director of esports at Northwestern College in Orange City, Iowa. And then just a couple months ago here, I started as the associate director of NAECAD, the National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors. So excited to talk a little bit today.
So, kind of like, how did you get started with esports, and then kind of how has that transition to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like a lot of us, it was kind of I fell into things a little bit. Didn't plan on the path necessarily. So, I was an undergrad at Northwestern in computer science, worked in the IT desk there, and was getting ready to enter a job in IT support. And then my last semester as a student, the college announced they were going to launch an esports program. And I'd always, I played sports growing up and, loved competition, but I always really loved video games and was always captivated by that space. And so I was excited about it. Participated that first semester when it was, still a little bit informal, just getting interest going, things like that, and just have fun connecting with other students who were doing that. And it was kind of being spearheaded by the two soccer coaches, the men's and women's soccer coaches at the time. They had been the ones spearheading the athletic department, saying like, "Hey, we should get this going. This is going to be a thing." Um, and I had, funnily enough, connected with one of those coaches earlier in my college career through playing Age of Empires 2 on campus with friends, and he had come to one of the nights, which was kind of a fun connection. But anyway, reaching the end of that time, they asked if I was interested in leading the program after I graduated. So I led the program part-time that first year while working in IT, and then I um, pitched the president and the interim athletic director on making it a full varsity sports, bringing me in full time, and expanding the program. And I got that meeting squeezed in just 3 days before we shut down for COVID. Got that approved just in the nick of time. And so I started full time the next year after that. So that was kind of my beginnings in esports. I suppose going back one level, my introduction to it was actually through Jay Prescott, the founder of NAECAD, and coincidentally my uncle,
Hmm.
when he was in charge of starting their program at Grandview in Des Moines back in 2017, maybe. And I remember him telling my brother and I about it, and we were just like, "What? That's crazy!" So that was my first introduction to it was through Jay. So yeah, as far as how my position changed through time, yep, part-time initially, full-time after that as the director at Northwestern, focused on coaching and recruiting and building the program there. And then, a couple of years ago, actually, I've been working with NAECAD part-time for 3 years since 2022, helping with operational support and guidance and input. But then, yeah, just started this new role in the fall. I love coaching, loved that opportunity to work with students. It was awesome, but I'm really excited to be jumping into this role now where I get to shift from, supporting students directly to supporting other coaches at the college and high school level. That was something that I experienced so powerfully, receiving support from people who had been in the space longer than I have and getting to be in a formal role to invest all my time and energy into those efforts is pretty rewarding and exciting. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of years.
Yeah, you talk about like it was part time at first, and you had to convince them to get full time and all that. And I think I hear that a lot. That a lot of the programs that started, they had to really do a lot of convincing to get full time status. But once people see it, they
Hmm.
really understand it. They really want to support it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, thankfully there was a pretty good understanding, and even in its initial conception, there was kind of this, okay, we'll launch it and pilot it and see if there's proof of concept. So I had, my job of convincing wasn't as hard as it might have been, because that was always on the table.
Yep.
I just think, having the inside connection to Grandview to be able to you know, have a better understanding of the space at large to present some of that information was really helpful. in kind of maybe accelerating those conversations. But yeah, there's always that dialogue that has to happen between, you know, often the people on the ground who have the higher understanding and engagement, and then the stakeholders and leadership who have the ability to approve and support those initiatives.
Yep. Well, you mentioned Grandview, and it was actually interesting. They were one of their coaches was presenting at a conference I was at in January 2020, which is how I really turned my focus towards esports and wanting to get involved with that.
Yeah.
It was funny. I go to Miami to an education technology conference to hear about a program just down the street from me. Pretty much. I'm like, yeah, that's how things work, right?
Yeah,
And
small world.
and you and I mean, met really because, talking about, I had program names and you were scouting kids, trying to get some
Yep.
of my students to come up there.
Yeah.
So that whole recruiting process, what were some of the things that you liked about it? Some of the things that were kind of tough?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny because when I first got hired, I was like, oh, recruit kids on a scholarship to come play video games. It's like the easiest sell ever. This will be no problem. But obviously, it's a little more complicated than that, and for good reason, and rightly so. I think that was just one of those naivety things of not having a full. And even though you're a college student, you don't necessarily fully grasp the breadth of decision making that goes into it for every student looking at college and different things and factors they have to consider. So for me, I enjoyed my favorite part of recruiting was just getting to meet students, getting to hear their
Hmm.
stories, understand what they are excited about and looking for, and just meeting some pretty, bright and sharp and excited young people. So that was definitely my favorite part of it. Early on, what I didn't enjoy was trying to sell the college. Like I
Yep.
loved Northwestern, I loved my experience there. I was excited about what we were building. But I just always felt strange about like, I don't know, trying to like sell the institution or sell the experience. And I think what I eventually learned was that wasn't a great way to go about it anyway.
Hmm.
And really it was more, I did that because I thought that's what recruiting was, right? And thankfully, over time, I figured out, recruiting really is more about building a relationship, building an understanding of what the student needs or works for them and is looking for, and then kind of helping them understand whether or not that your program is a good fit for them, And
Yep.
when it transitioned from me trying to convince people to come here to me just presenting, hey, this is what we are. Who are you? What are you looking for? What are you passionate about? Are you a good fit for us? And do you think and do I think you would have a great experience here and receive valuable education and community and competitive and mentorship opportunity? So that to me really transitioned recruiting. Again, when I was able to shift more from that, I have to sell, I have to pitch, I have to convince to now I just get to learn about these kids and get to know them and build a relationship and then just through that process figure out, hey, is this a good idea for you and for
Yep.
me? So yeah, that was probably my favorite part about it.
I mean, I like the campus up there in Orange City just because that's where Ragbri started this year. So
Yeah.
I will say the athletic building provides some nice refuge from the storm when it passed through that first night. So that's perfect way to start Ragbri with a nice thunderstorm
Yeah.
passing over all the tents.
Yep.
Um, I did see all the trophies there, and I'm like, you know what? They should put the esports trophies next to the basketball trophies.
True.
Just
True.
yeah,
I
nice
hadn't
trophy.
quite gotten around to having that conversation
Yeah.
yet. We were working our way in that direction. We had just gotten started with kind of having our first conference tournament within like the local athletic conference. So that was hopefully coming maybe one day.
Yeah. Well, even in the high school, I think like looking at Veda, they did put up the banners in the gym with all the other
Yeah.
sports. But in
Yeah.
Ames, I have our state title from Rocket League last year. It just sits in my office. So kind of different things.
It's a nice paperweight. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I get to do. So, what have been some of those other than recruiting? What are some of the biggest challenges you guys had kind of overcome there at Northwestern or UC in general?
Yeah. I think, one challenge that, tied to recruiting, one to recruiting and one to just the experience of the program is I think for a lot of programs, again, you're given if your program's recruitment given, right? You're given this mandate to like bring in students, recruit people, and so you feel this pressure to bring And early on, especially if you're not trained, you're unsure of how to go about recruiting, you can feel a little, I experienced some feelings of like desperation of like, man, I really got to bring in kids, and that can lead you to make short-term decisions with long-term negative outcomes. So,
Yep.
whether that's bringing in kids who, really want to come, but boy, their GPA is not, the best, and so they might struggle academically, and
Yep.
or hey, they're excited about esports and they're a good player, but they're not the best culture fit for your team or for a program, or they're really more casual, or well, they play these games that we don't currently support. I guess we could start a team for this game
Hmm.
too. I see that. I mean, I felt the pressure for that. I even, I recruited a kid to play Madden, even though we didn't have Madden. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. We'll let you play Madden, right? We'll do that. And I didn't love the way that turned out. It didn't fit the culture of our program, which was very, this is a varsity sport. We practice 4 to 5 days a week as a team, building, relationship that's deep and meaningful, and there's all this growth. And this kid was, the one man Madden team, right? Because that's the way
Yep.
sports games kind of worked. And we only had the one player. And so just those lessons early on of realizing it's valuable, important to have conversations with supervisors around, okay, yes, recruiting is important, so I need to get the help that I need with recruiting. And thankfully,
Hmm.
that was, given to me over time with trainings through professional development that our athletic department provided that really built my skills because I just didn't have any recruiting skills.
Yep.
But even before that, again, these conversations that I had later, just of, yes, this is important, but can I prioritize the long-term health at maybe short-term cost, right? Are we okay with maybe not bringing in, this many kids or that many kids while we build up a better pipeline, right? I think I
Yep.
could have been a little less anxious about hitting specific numbers, um, and prioritizing fits. And that's kind of where I got to the second half of my tenure of 6 years, and that helped us build the program up over time. So I think that is just one is just making decisions that might help in the short term, but then even with that one kid with Madden, it was extra work now. Like I now have a whole nother team, a whole nother league, a whole nother schedule that I have to manage for one student,
Hmm.
and so that again led us to going, okay, we're only going to run 3 games. We're going to build varsity and J. We're going to go deep, not wide. We're going to run fewer games, more practices, multiple rosters to provide a structured, reliable experience. So, and again, just all of that is kind of wrapped in the challenge is getting really clear about what your program is and what it is not.
Yeah.
And being consistent with holding the line and going, what do we value? What are we trying to accomplish? What will best help us do that? And then say no to everything else. Like that was definitely a skill I had to build. And I think a challenge that I see a lot of coaches face in esports is the challenge of getting clear and saying no. Even just like I think you know so much of esports has kind of adopted or catered to the habits and natural gaming patterns of students as a hobby rather than creating a structured sport environment that's good
Yep.
for them. Like, I feel like I see that a lot in many collegiate and high school leagues where again you have 2 seasons, you're essentially competing year round, but maybe you only practice 1 or 2 times a week. Like it's not very structured, but it's also very lengthy in the
Yep.
amount of the time of year it covers. And so I think one thing that is a challenge that the space faces is not is at what point do we try to step back and go, what system will actually create the outcomes we are looking for, both for students and staff? Um, because I think a lot of leaders in the space look at esports as this opportunity to provide, mentorship, growth, social, emotional learning, community, college opportunity, like all these great outcomes that people often associate with, sports and traditional activities where students are brought together in a formal setting. And I think that's a real, genuine benefit that esports provides. Um, But I think often the challenge is, okay, we just put everyone in the room and kind of let them do what they were doing already, which is like play all year
Yeah.
and play on their own terms, play all year. And I think the challenge that, that system has kind of been cementing a little bit, but I think there needs to be a stepping back of what, how do we push against the natural habits and established patterns of the students and present them with a compelling and genuinely valuable alternative of, hey, we're not going to play all year. We're not gonna do it on our own terms. Like here's a structure and a system that we know will be good for you and provide these great outcomes, even if it's not what you're naturally looking for. And there's a balance to be found there, for sure, right? I'm definitely speaking through some of my experiences,
Yep.
being under athletics, developing a program as a varsity sport. And I think there's great value from club and more casual structures and systems. I think that's there, but I think um, understanding the differences between those systems and separating them out is important as well. Because right now everything's often very, very siloed together, and there's not a distinction between what kind of engagement, what kind of program, what kind of experience are we talking about here, and what's the goal behind it. So,
Yeah, I would say a lot of that does. I mean, the same thing we see at the high school level. I mean, just I like the fact we have distinct seasons, so we know when one season ends
hmm
and we get to another one. Because they're still playing those games. Like my kids who are coming out
hmm
for Overwatch now, I know they were playing Overwatch last week. It's just now it's a different environment, trying to
yeah,
get them used to that. Um, and even just like some of the freshmen when they come on board, it's that learning curve for them to figure out what's different between what they're doing before and what they're doing now,
yeah,
and having to tell them like, no, these are the rules around practice. This is our skills we're going to work on today. We're not just coming to play games. We actually have to work better at some things,
yeah, yep.
identify those skills and improve. Otherwise, it is just playing video games. You're not guaranteed to get better.
Yeah. And like I think it's it's great to provide that opportunity, and it's hard to do that to engage esports as a sport with structure and expectation and
Yep.
rules. Like there comes a drain with that. Like I remember in high school, by the end of football season, I was ready to be done with football for the next 9 months, right? Like it was nice to move on from some of that structure and some of those expectations, but the intensity and the expectations were good for that period of time, right?
Yep.
And I think at the high school level, especially college too, but high school especially, having segmented seasons one time a year again provides the opportunity to be involved in esports in a serious way on a structured level, but then to do other things with the
Yep.
rest of your year. Rather than it's like, well, I mean, we've got our fall season, we've got our winter season, we've got our spring season, we've got our summer tournament. Like, it's, I think that's, I think there's a lot of great things that esports can take and learn from athletics, but I think year-round engagement is not one of them. I think
Yep.
that is a net negative that athletics has fallen into, especially at anything below college. I mean, even college level, to be honest. Like, yeah, I think over engagement, semi inevitable in a competitive world, like where everyone's always trying to find an edge. But I think it's something worth pushing back on, especially below college level for sure.
hmm Yeah, I do worry about the kids getting burned out a little bit about the games because I know
Yeah,
they're playing outside. Then they come to
100%.
school and we're a little bit more focused.
Yep.
That's when some days like I'm like, you know what? We need a Friday off. You guys get no practice today. Go do whatever you want. Some of them
Yeah.
may just go home and play the game, but this is about making sure that their energy levels, because for some of them, it's the first organized thing they've done where they are expected to
Yeah.
do things, and there's those expectations can build up over time.
Yeah, there's a learning curve that comes with that, right? And I mean, you talk about burnout. We experienced that with our college teams where, we'd do the fall season, we'd start the spring season, and by, March, everybody's burnt, everybody's
Yep.
tired. So we started doing, all right, we're just gonna do one. We'll do 2 games in the fall, we'll do 1 game in the spring. Your off season semester, we'll practice a little bit, but we're not going to practice 5 days a week in your off season. So, and that, you know, it's interesting. Over time, we start, students start asking, are you sure we can't compete in the other semester? It's like, we've been here
Yep.
before, trust me. And it's always worked out really quite well in that way. But again, that's against the grain. It doesn't fit the current ecosystem. So it came with some challenges, with some sacrifices. But again, part of going back to earlier things we talked about, part of recruiting, part of the challenge of understanding what your program's priorities are and holding them and saying no, right? Like we had to say no to, you know, trying to earn points 2 times to make it to nationals. We had to say no
Yep.
to some players who wanted to play all year. But over time, by saying no, we built a program of people who all said yes to the same thing and knew what they were saying yes to. And that created a really strong cohesion in the program. And I think both at the high school and college and any level of esports, what causes the most amount of friction in teams is lack of alignment, of commitment, and goals and understanding. It's not a lack of alignment of skill in the
Hmm.
game. It's a lack of alignment in what do we value, what level of commitment, and what are we trying to accomplish.
Yep. No, I fully agree with that. Especially, I had a lot of seniors graduate last year, so I got a lot of new kids this year. So it's trying to rebuild that culture, right? A little
Yeah,
bit wary. We had a couple days this week where I let them come in and practice, but I'm like, all right, next week we'll start working on that culture piece, really gain that home.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And going back to your original question of challenges, like we've talked about some challenges of the space overall, but one thing that often comes to mind for me with challenges in esports for the coaches and leaders, especially both high school and college, is some of the just the isolation piece a little bit. I think this is
Hmm.
especially acute at the college level, but still so at the high school level, where, the high school level, you've got hopefully your state association and there's a network of sorts you can get plugged into pretty quickly. But I think even at college and high school, there's, you might be the only one at the school who kind of understands what this is, at least for a
Yep.
little while, right? And so one thing I benefited from a lot, and I always encourage people to seek out is find other people, find mentors, find peers in the space who you can have those conversations with where they speak the same language as you. I was fortunate. I had a good relationship with, my employers, with my
Hmm.
coaches in the athletic department. I know what football, baseball, and basketball are. They don't know what esports is,
Yep.
like those relationships were good, but they could only go so far because there's not this same level of understanding. So, and then the other one I think is, lack of training, lack of preparation, clear paths for learning how to succeed in these roles. Like, I mean, you even saw it in my story, right? Like people with passion and willingness come into the space, but often unplanned,
Yep.
without training, and maybe without a understanding of, the sports world in general or collegiate athletics in that context, or just higher education or high school in the education world. So I think that's like one of the great challenges of leaders is a lot of us are willing and passionate and able, but just not trained and not sure of what direction to go. And circling back to earlier, like that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about getting to work through NAECAD is addressing some of those pain points that I experienced as a coach of
Yep.
isolation and of lack of training is, so much of my own personal confidence and joy came from being taught, being taught by often people outside the esports space, but people inside the space as well, and just creating more direct opportunities for leaders to learn and to grow and figure out how do I go about doing this in a way that helps me accomplish the goals I have, which, for so many of us is how do I help these students grow, thrive, succeed, and excel. So,
Yeah. Well, I was talking with Josh Knutson just recently
mm,
about that, and said like, he was a coach 2016, 2019.
yeah,
Talk about one of the big differences is just that there are more opportunities for learning nowadays. I think when I started in 2020, I had another coach, but we both were learning on the fly. And now 6 years later, I feel like I've learned a lot, but I still feel like there's so much more to learn.
Hmm.
But a lot of the coaches I'm talking with, it was those conversations where like what somebody was brand new to the school, first year teacher. Hey, you want to coach esports?
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to happen. So yeah, I know with NAECAD with the coaching cohort, or I'm saying it wrong, but that just came out. That's something that's is very interesting to me, and I think that's going to be great for a lot of young coaches
Yeah.
because those skills that you have to learn for how you get going. I will always tout our state league
Yeah.
because everybody's so willing to share learning and help each other out. That's been one of those core things. When you go to a state tournament in person, finally get to meet everybody face to face, and now have some more
Hmm.
of those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. No, referring to the certification, is that kind of what you were talking about, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, just launching the certification here. That was a big driver of it, was like, how do we create common language, common understanding, and give those, especially at the high school level where, like you said, like could be a first year teacher or just someone who's been around a while and doesn't know a lot about esports, but was just willing to say yes, right? Like,
Yep.
how do we train both them, people who've been doing it for a little while, give them the core skills of like, hey, what does it mean to be a coach? How do you understand esports skill and development? And how do you build and structure practices and
Mm-hmm.
define, a coaching philosophy? Um, and that was a big reason behind that. Level one, getting ready to get out of beta and launch fully here in the next few weeks, and level two hopefully will be coming, next year. So that, we've received a lot of positive feedback. I think we've had almost 200 people between online and the in-person clinics we've run take it now, and it's really been rewarding because basically I started August 4th, and for 3.5 months I didn't do anything else but work on the certification. And it's been really rewarding to get a lot of feedback and have people, both veterans of the space and
Yep.
newcomers, just be really excited about what is being offered up. And that is super encouraging to me. I'm hopeful to see, what the ripple effect can be over the next few years of building a baseline of skills and competence for coaches to hit the ground running a little bit faster, and develop some of those things, and reduce the repeated pain points and
Yep.
lessons, right? Share that knowledge around. So yeah, excited about that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things we can do is help each other through that, share the knowledge. And I think I'm really looking forward. I'm going to hopefully be checking. I got, get some free time coming up. That's my little key thing and never have much. But I was talking
Yeah,
with Christian Darnold, who's the first year esports coach, first season, and they're going to the state
yeah,
tournament. I can't remember if they went today or tomorrow, but as soon as he was on one of the episodes here for the podcast, and as soon as we're done, I turned off like, hey, here's the tips I'm going to give you about the state tournament
hmm,
because you're going to it and we've been there enough times that I think there's a lot we've learned. And so just being able to share out, I know I went to the NAECAD summer conference in 2024 up at the University of Minnesota. Was not able to go this last summer because of some conflicting dates. I'm hoping to put it on my calendar for next summer. Because those opportunities come together to learn. I think that's important, especially as the programs are,
yeah,
every state seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger,
hmm,
wanting to have those opportunities for everybody to learn from each other. And that's one reason why I'm doing this is because I
yeah,
think everybody has so much to share. And I want to make sure we have access to that.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Funny thing about Christian Darnold, he and I actually grew up in the same town, so I
Yeah.
know who he is, and we both grew up in Waverly, Iowa. So small
Oh, yeah.
small world
Well, he's
again.
doing pretty
So
good up there in Janesville, 6-1
yeah,
going to state. So hopefully
not bad.
I didn't pay attention today. We got distracted at work with all sorts of fun things. So don't want to take too much of your time. So is there anything else you kind of want to share? Something we didn't get to?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not terribly, to be honest. I think just, it's I love what esports can do for
Yep.
students. I love, it has always been the same for me back to when I pitched the athletic director and president on making it a full sport. Was like, I learned so much and received so much through playing football, through playing sports, from learning from coaches who were willing to hold me accountable and push me and help me grow. And I believe, at the college level especially, but even down in the high school level, like I mean, my pitch was at the college level because I played high school athletics, but I
Yeah.
was never going to play college athletics. But the reality is that applies up and down the, the gambit of students who aren't going to get plugged into those traditional currently existing teams, clubs, structures, systems that have been built up and provide great learning, mentorship, community, competition, life lesson, right? Esports is a place that can provide that to
Yep.
a group of students who, whether it's, in high school, they're not going to do anything else, or maybe they did in high school, but they're not going to get an opportunity to do it in college. Just there's a great opportunity to extend learning and growth opportunities to students who wouldn't have had those. Not that there's no opportunities that exist, but I think esports provides a good one for where kids are at. But again, something that I've learned both through personal experience and just time in the space is like those outcomes are not automatic. And for us as leaders, pursuing our own learning and growth to create those outcomes, both through just personal development, but also how we build and structure our programs is just really, really important. Because it can be easy to just get caught up in doing things that seem important or like there was a year where I was like, all right, we're finally gonna like improve our social media game, and we started doing all this stuff, and it was fine, but it took a lot of time, and we eventually developed some good systems the next year that was like, all right, I want to again empower some student leaders and bring in some interns from other parts of campus and create another way of doing this. But it pulled us away for a little while from some of our, core priorities. And part of that is just the natural learning process, but just creating the opportunity for students to learn and grow is something I see as awesome, but it's not something that we can do haphazardly. So
Yep.
pursuing that growth is important.
No, I think all that's great. And yeah, the learning is going to be, as everything keeps growing, is going to be very important. So, all
Yeah,
right. Well, thank
absolutely.
you for being on this episode. And I'll make sure to be sharing out all the links to that. People should be checking out NAECAD. If you're not an esports coach in NAECAD, definitely check it out. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate the time and looking forward to connecting at the next convention or maybe next time I swing by the state tournament. Should be fun.
Yep. Hopefully, my team makes it next time. So, all right. Thank you. And everybody listening, keep around for more episodes.